Hello all brothers and sisters who have returned to my channel. Today I will summarize full Season 1 of the story Reincarnated as the Prince of the Enemy Empire. This young man is named Baron, the brave prince of the Secreta Empire. In the final battle, Baron chose to sacrifice himself to protect his country from disaster. However, instead of ending his life, he was reincarnated 10 years in the past as the useless prince of the enemy empire. Aware of his new mission, he decided to overthrow the unjust regime and return freedom to the people. With new strength and knowledge from his previous life, Baron began his arduous journey to fight against the Kiri's empire. The story begins with a scene of devastation, bodies lying scattered on the ground, just like hell if hell truly existed. Baron was panting heavily. His entire face was covered in blood. Baron opened his eyes wide in shock, so this is the place. At that moment, one of Baron's guards was using his own body to shield him from the arrows. That was Kiri with fresh blood at the corner of his mouth. He uttered each word with difficulty. "Your Majesty. Baron." He had no strength left and collapsed onto Baron's shoulder. Baron called out in panic. Kiri whispered, "I did my best." His voice was filled with exhaustion. "But I had to at least do this, to repay you." Baron tried to raise his voice. He reassured him. "It's okay, Kiri." But Kiri placed the sword in his hand. "Please, raise your sword." Before Baron could finish his sentence, Kiri lost all strength and slipped off Baron's shoulder, collapsing to the ground. "Don't stop." Baron clenched his teeth in pain. "No, Kiri." He lifted the sword in his hand with great effort. Finally, Baron burst into a rage. He screamed in fury, the sound so powerful it shook everything nearby. "Kiss, a nation formed by humans and dragons. Kiss demanded the treasure of my homeland Scythia." Moments later, Baron slashed Akira's soldier with a single strike. Another one was also stabbed straight in the neck by his sword, spewing out a mouthful of fresh blood. Baron ruthlessly slaughtered the enemies, and we had rejected that demand. At that moment, a mage from the enemy forces cast a magic circle, unleashing a surge of blue energy. Just as it shot straight toward Baron, he only had time to catch a glimpse of it out of the corner of his eye. But that surge of power had already transformed into a sharp blade slicing off his arm. Baron clenched his teeth in agony, and that was just the beginning. And continued to fight against the enemies in the final war of our homeland. This is Baron Scythia, the king of Scythia. A mage from the Kiss side gave the order, "Only one left, for the glory of Kiss." Immediately, a massive magic array opened up in the sky. It fired a beam of light straight down at Baron, carrying with it blazing fireballs. Baron struggled to stay standing, his left arm gone. He thought, "I know. It's too late. I can feel death approaching." But Baron remembered Kiri's words, "Don't stop." So he opened his eyes wide with determination and thought, "I can't let this stop me." Baron raised his sword, preparing to face the fireball rushing toward him at an incredible speed. He slashed right through the center of the fireball, and in his mind there was only one thought: "I am the sword of Secreta." At that moment, a group of people approached Baron. He looked at them. Their numbers were terrifying. All of them wore hoods and had their faces covered. The magic legion of Kiris Vank and the one who started it all, the Mad King of Kiris Blun. Baron clenched his teeth in fury, his heart filled with hatred. They turned my motherland into a living hell. At that moment, one person stepped forward. That person removed their hood and said, "An honor to meet you. I am the commander of Vank Accent." Accent spoke up. "What is your name?" Baron replied coldly. I've forgotten everything he said, then leapt forward with momentum. "I am nothing but the sword that serves the king." As he spoke, Baron charged swiftly toward Accent and swung his sword. But Accent showed no fear. Instead, he smiled with excitement. He raised his hand using magic to conjure shards of binding ice. "I will remember you well." "The king of Scythia," Accent, he said while controlling the shards of ice to pierce into Baron, sending him falling backward. Baron was struck down, yet his hand still reached out, desperate to keep fighting. His face twisted in pain, tears began to fall. In that moment, I saw it. My entire life, the collapse of my beloved motherland. And the moment all light disappeared. In a sunlit room, a voice called out, "You must wake up now, Prince." Yan gently rang the small bell in her hand. "Did you sleep well, my lord?" He slowly sat up without saying a word, while Yan continued urging, "You must hurry. Prince Blanche has already gone ahead." He quickly grabbed the blanket tightly and exclaimed, "What, Blanche?" He touched his hand in confusion. My hand? It was cut off. Hearing that, Yan turned pale. What, Your Highness? Why would you say something so horrible? The maidservants in the room exchanged uneasy glances, whispering to each other. His hand was cut off. Was he having a nightmare? Suddenly, Sen covered his face and screamed, "Ah!" Yen was startled. Your Highness, are you all right? Karan, with the soul of Baron reincarnated within, was struggling inside, torn over the name that belonged to the one he hated most. Karan, with the soul of Baron reincarnated within, was struggling inside, torn over the name that belonged to the one he hated most. He spoke up and asked Yan, "Who am I?" Yan looked confused. What do you mean? But you still answered him as Kalyan Ran Kiss, the third prince of Kiris Karan. After hearing that, he was stunned and inwardly sighed that this was a terrible nightmare. In his mind, he tried to remember that person. Then he looked at Yan, who was watching him worriedly. Kalyan felt confused inside, wondering what had happened. He sat up and asked, "What day is it today?" Yan replied, "It's the 28th of August. Kalyan then loudly asked, "What year?" Yan blankly answered, "It's the year 522. Is something wrong, Your Highness?" Yan asked. Kalyan grew flustered and thought, "Impossible, this is a whole decade before the final battle." The war broke out, originating from the timeline axis. A unique and mysterious artifact with the power to reverse time suddenly appeared in the Cydia Palace. The news spread quickly, and the ruler of the entire continent, Kiss, gradually began to crave the timeline axis. At that time, the leaders of Shriya had a heated argument. What do you mean? Kiris ordered them to take control of the timeline axis. That's absurd. Kiris is indeed powerful, but the timeline axis clearly belongs to us. No matter what, we absolutely cannot hand over such a dangerous artifact to a rival nation. Our side immediately rejected Kiris's proposal, and then they waged war on us, as if they had been waiting for this excuse all along. And while the outside was a bloody battlefield, she cried while holding Baron's hand, "Baron, don't." He was in pain. Everyone who went to the battlefield had already died. Akin gripped Baron's hand tightly. "I can't lose you too." But Baron didn't listen. He remembered that moment that day. He was too late. "He must have witnessed my death with his own eyes," Akin screamed in agony. "No, Baron, Baron." At that moment he regretted it and shouted, "If only I could go back to the time before that terrifying artifact appeared." Suddenly Baron realized something. Wait a minute. He remembered the timeline axis. No way. C hurriedly threw off the blanket and got out of bed. Yan was surprised. "Your Highness, where are you going?" C reached out to open the window, thinking to himself, could it be... Is it possible that I've already used the timeline axis to reverse time? Could it be that he gave me this final chance to stop everything? The downfall of my homeland, Set Creatia. Yan, flustered, bowed slightly. "Your Highness, I understand that joining everyone for breakfast must be very difficult for you, but..." He spoke up to remind him, "We can't delay any longer." Kalyan gripped the window frame tightly. "All right." He turned around with a gentle smile. "I'm sorry to keep you waiting. I'll get ready right away. If it's for the sake of making full use of this opportunity, then I will definitely survive well this time as the Prince of Kiss." The large doors slowly opened, and a voice rang out, "Carry on, third prince. Please come in for your meal." Kalyan stepped inside. Randall was already there waiting. Yan whispered to Kalyan, "Forgive me, Your Highness, I should have been a bit quicker." His voice was soft. "I didn't expect Prince Randall to arrive here first." And all of them belonged to the holy bloodline of Tens. By the Emperor's decree, breakfast would be prepared jointly for all three sons every morning. But according to the memories within his mind, he had always... Kalyan politely stepped forward, bowed, and said, "Forgive me for being late." Randall didn't respond at all. He simply stayed silent, savoring his tea. Treated as if he didn't exist. Kalyan sat down with a smile on his face, though inwardly he sighed. "I can't believe he's blatantly ignoring me like this. How irritating." He silently stayed on guard. Suddenly a loud noise echoed. Someone hurriedly stepped inside, startling the butler. He quickly spoke, "Blanche, second prince, please join us for the meal." Blanche quickly plopped down into his seat. Kalyan saw him and whispered in fear, "What the hell is this?" His gaze landed on Blanche's bare chest, which his shirt failed to cover. Kalyan couldn't believe it in his mind. What kind of royal family member goes around looking like this? He compared this to the brutal image of Blanche from before, and thought in confusion, is he really the Mad King Blanche that I once knew? At that moment, Blanche nodded, giving the maid permission to pour the tea. Calian sighed inwardly. Judging by his outfit, maybe madness means something entirely different here. He glanced over at Randall, who was sitting nearby. Calian thought, if I remember correctly, the first prince isn't allowed to provoke the second prince, because the current Queen of Kiss is Blanche's biological mother, and no one in this royal palace can challenge her authority. Calian sipped his tea, silently lamenting, having to survive in a place like this. How disheartening. He didn't realize that Blanche was watching him. Blanche spoke up, making Calian freeze. How crude. He turned to look at Blanche. Blanche's gaze was cold. You have no manners at all. In the end, you and your mother are just the same. Calian gritted his teeth angrily. He gripped the teacup so tightly that his hands trembled, trying to restrain himself. I must endure. I cannot let the opportunity he gave me go to waste. But I still had the feeling that something was rising in my throat. Plant Trunkiris, the one who devastated my homeland. Celine glared at BLCH with hatred. I wanted to slash his throat open immediately. BLCH was startled by his gaze, a bit panicked and surprised. A teacup suddenly fell, creating a loud noise. LeBranche had swung his hand and slammed it to the ground. He clenched his teeth, furrowed his brows in anger. How dare you look at me like that, huh? Randall quickly put down the teacup. Enough. Calian and Blanche turned their heads to look at him. Blanche noticed Randall's gaze directed at Calian. He glanced over. He saw Celine still wearing the same expression as before. BLCH irritably ran his hand through his hair. He slammed the table and stood up. I'm leaving. BLCH was sick of being stared at by that disgusting crimson eye. I'm not even hungry anymore. Suddenly, Randall also stood up, startling Kion and drawing his attention. Randall adjusted his collar. Sion, take a look at your behavior. His expression was emotionless. The Emperor's birthday is coming up soon. Are you planning to cause trouble right before the celebration? Elian sneered when he heard that. He felt annoyed, thinking, is he saying, this is my fault? Isn't it because of that bastard who just stood up and left? Jan spoke up from behind. Your Highness. Are you all right? Are you hurt anywhere? He knelt on one knee to wipe C's shoes. Honestly, you run into this kind of thing every day. Please forgive me, it even splashed all over your shoes. Celai looked at him with satisfaction, thinking, at least I still have a loyal servant to take care of me better than relying on myself. Even though he witnessed terrible things happening to himself every single day. Calian placed his hand on Yan's shoulder. He spoke. Yan, thank you for caring about me. Yan was surprised to see his smile, thinking, normally, Prince Calian would just cry in silence, but now, he's smiling. The first queen of Kiris Dragon was Fanan. She had hair as black as the night sky and eyes like sacred fire. Sion was the only prince who inherited her physical features, but his power was incredibly pathetic. Calian always tried to hide his red eyes, because Blanche hated them. The reason behind that action was, at that time, Blanche had bluntly insulted the disgusting crimson eyes Prince Blanche. Celai fell silent, thinking he felt a bit awkward, like he was peeking into someone else's memories. He sighed with empty arms, inwardly lamenting. And yet this guy hides his own eyes just because he's afraid of someone like BL. How foolish. Jan walked over from somewhere. What's wrong, Your Highness? Do you want me to do anything? See, Leon replied. No, let's just head back first. Jan remarked. Your Highness, you're acting strange today. Did you read a night novel last night or something? Sion calmly replied, no. The prince was born to a concubine of humble origin. He was always afraid of everything and had no one to rely on. He was so weak that he couldn't even protect himself. That was Calian's current situation. He turned to Jan and asked, how old am I now? Jan, stunned, replied, in 4 months, Your Highness will be 15 years old. Calian's eyes widened as memories flooded back. At that time, Calian was assassinated. He had tried to poison Queen Celis but failed, and he was hanged for fear of the crime as the news was announced. But no one believed it was true. Calian, worried, thought someone must be targeting me soon. The large door swung open and Jan quickly called out, Your Highness. He tried to catch up, shouting, Calian, slow down. A month or two before Calian's death, when I didn't know what had happened to my old body or Baron, I couldn't just sit still. Jan was still worried. If you fall, I'll cut it off. Jan pulled me along. Yen, in a panic, pulled me along. A sharp pair of scissors was handed over. Yan, confused, asked, "Your Highness, what do you need the scissors for?" Kian held the scissors and smiled. He raised the scissors ready to cut his hair while Anan, filled with fear, responded, "Change a few things." Kalian thought if there was a predetermined future, he would change it. Yan's face turned pale with panic. "Your Highness, what are you doing? Prince Branch will be very upset." Seelai adjusted his hair. "I can't keep living like a fool just because he hates my eyes." He smiled to reassure them. "It's all right, don't worry." Kalian's face radiated confidence as he said, "I'll handle it." When Blanche saw Kalian's new appearance, he exclaimed, "You're insane!" Yan stood behind Kalian, his face filled with fear. "Prince Blanche." Yan silently shed tears, thinking, "Is this what you meant by handling it?" Blanche directly sat down in the chair, his red eyes glaring. Baron took a sip of water and then spoke. He smiled and reminded, "Your name is Kalian Plancha." BLCH silently reached for the knife on the table, pulling it toward himself, and responded, "Ah yes, I should call you that." His gaze suddenly turned filled with killing intent. Immediately, BLCH grabbed the knife and raised it high, aimed at the person. The servants nearby were extremely frightened, and was also panicked upon seeing this, while Baron remained completely unfazed. The knife rapidly sped toward him. A sound like a stabbing noise echoed. A drop of blood began to trickle down. "You shouted, Your Highness." "You shouted, Your Highness." Baron used his own hand to tightly grab the knife in Yan's astonishment. "You shouted, Your Highness? You were so worried that you stammered, Your Highness, your hand. You're injured. Badly." Bluch said teasingly, "Oh dear, I slipped." He rested his chin on his hand with a sharp look, pretending to care. "Oh no, Karan's hand is injured." Baron couldn't help but chuckle lightly as he walked over to Bluch and slammed the knife onto the table, showing that the recent attack had no effect. "I'm fine, Branch." Blanche suddenly fell silent. Baron raised his bleeding hand. "It's nothing." In his room, Kalian had his wound treated. Yan, with a worried expression, advised, "Your Highness, I think we should call for treatment." Baron raised his hand to indicate it wasn't necessary. He looked at his hand. "It's just a small cut." Yan couldn't help but feel anxious, but "He called your name Yan." Baron asked, "Why didn't you dodge earlier?" He explained, "You know that strike was aimed at you. If I hadn't blocked it, what would have happened to you?" You kneeled on the ground and replied, "But if I dodged, he would use that as an excuse to harm you, Your Highness." Baron chuckled lightly, then stood up, lifted the curtain, and stepped into a room. He instructed, "Remember, my hand is bleeding and my heart is racing. I'll wash my face to calm down, so don't let anyone in." Yan quickly stopped him. "Wait, Your Highness, I'll help you." Baron refused. "I can do it myself, and don't call Sister Lu here." Yan, looking troubled, replied, "Your Highness, you cried outside feeling miserable. Why can't I call Sister Lu?" Baron recalled earlier. In the moment when the knife flew toward Anan, he remembered that he had planned to use aura to target Blanche's attack, but he stood behind the curtain, recalling that strange feeling. Suddenly his heart ached. A thought flashed in his mind: I should recreate that situation. He began to focus his energy to assess Kalian's condition. The surrounding energy enveloped Kalian's body. Suddenly Baron struck his chest sharply. "What is this?" He felt something very strange within Silan's body. He could sense that Sian's heart was surrounded by magical circles, 3 mana rings near the heart. He suddenly realized Kalian. "You're a mage, aren't you?" A few days later, the scene shifted. Aaron in Kian's body was sitting on the chair, looking around awkwardly. Jan, standing beside him, spoke. "It's been 3 days." You yelled out in pity. "Your wound. It's still serious." He reassured you. "I told you, it's nothing." You, with tears streaming down your face, said with a heavy heart, "But, Your Highness, everything is ready now." He introduced himself. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Your Highness. I am the tailor." Suddenly, he dropped the measuring tape from his hand. It fell to the ground, and his face went blank. Baron stood up and asked, "What's wrong?" He sweat profusely and bowed his head. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to." But Freya interrupted Seike. Seike, feeling awkward, said, "Your Highness, I truly apologize." He sighed silently, understanding that ever since cutting his hair, he'd been receiving reactions like this. It turned out that Slake's reaction was because Kalian, the one who had endured all the hardships for looking like his mother, whom he had never met, had begun to hate seeing his own face. He started destroying every mirror in the room. Baron waved his hand. "It's fine. I know I look like Freya. Now come here and do what you need to do," he said calmly. Sake replied. Please allow me to take your measurements. Your Highness. He looked at Karan's tiny arm and said with concern, You need to eat more, Your Highness. You're still too small. Setia looked into the mirror and muttered, This really is worrisome. The Kiri's royal family is the descendant of dragons, and even more so the descendant of two heroes who sealed the demon god, Hara and Shan. Sanan bestowed the royal bloodline of the Kiri's family with healing powers and magical abilities. The blessing of Sanan. He looked at the bandaged arm and carefully said, In other words, Kalyan's wound should have healed by now, but it hasn't healed at all. Srita felt a sharp pain in her chest, and every time she used mana, her heart would throb painfully. Baron was wondering, is there anyone who understands mana? Sake proudly said, I've prepared outfits that are perfect for the Emperor's birthday banquet. He suddenly realized that's right, the birthday banquet. He realized the opportunity had come. In that case, he would go there. The great mage Ellen, I must meet him. In Baron's mind, he was one of the 3 or 4 people who were the legendary 7 archmages. And he was the idol of all mages in the past. Ellen Manon had been invited to the king's birthday banquet and was visiting Kiris. He suddenly realized that's right, the birthday banquet. He realized the opportunity had come. In that case, he would go there. The great mage Elin, I must meet him. In Baron's mind, he was one of the 3 or 4 people who were the legendary 7 archmages. And he was the idol of all mages in the past. Ellen Manin had been invited to the king's birthday banquet and was visiting Kiris. He recalled a few events and stories about a mistake that led to him being turned away at the door. It had reached the neighboring kingdom Sitia. Ellen Manin, the one who could not attend the festivals. He had become the unapproachable mage. 10 years later, he was the only one on the continent capable of such feats. Baron crossed his legs and propped his hand deep in thought. When it came to knowledge of mana, no one could surpass him. He would be able to help with the issue regarding his body. He turned his head to look out the window. He wasn't sure what the mistake was, but Kiris had never treated mages poorly. He wasn't sure if Ellen would agree to his request. Below, Pen was striding forward. The reason why tens of thousands of guards refused to join the Kiri's kingdom. He observed the sword at Pen's side, recognizing the influence from Blanche's maternal family, the Bren family. Baron quietly calculated that even though he could control the strength of Bren, he still needed the power of the mages. If I can bring Ellen to my side, I could prevent the war that Blanche is about to ignite. He stood up thinking before that. Baron looked at everyone gathered around the table, chatting enthusiastically. Aren't these ribbons too small? I prefer ribbons as big as the sample here, he said, his eyes sparkling with pride. We should add more, right? He sighed, thinking to himself, I need to deal with this first. He looked serious. No ribbons, no lace. They're useless. Everyone was surprised. What, you oppose it? He continued. If I wear that lace, do you think I'll be all right? What's wrong with those bells? What are you trying to do? Inside Karan's castle, Baron was calmly enjoying a hot cup of tea, savoring the beautiful morning. He took a sip, enjoying the tea, then sat back and thought. I'm slowly getting used to this life, he thought to himself. He looked at Karan's hand, thinking, my hand has fully healed now, and Blanche is ignoring me. This is even more advantageous. Yan took the cup of tea from him and happily reported the day's schedule. In the morning, there's the riding lesson, and in the afternoon you have a dinner appointment with the Empress and the Marquis Bren. He sighed wearily. In the end, I'll have to meet him anyway. That's it. Yan felt confused. Your Highness, are you planning to train today as well? He replied, if you call it training, it's really just running around the lake next to the palace. Baron smiled brightly and assured, don't worry too much. What could possibly happen? In the vast training area, his legs moved with heavy steps as he ran. He stopped, panting heavily, drenched in sweat. Baron, clearly exhausted, asked, you must be out of breath too, right? He could only scream in his mind. I'm going to die, Marilyn asked worriedly. Are you all right, sir? She was the maid of Kalian, the second daughter of the general in charge of defending the outskirts. She summed it up. The first day was 4.5 laps. The third day was 4 laps. Today he was leaning his worn-out body against the tree trunk. She reported, sir, you only managed to run 3 laps today. Baron was speechless. He silently pondered, am I really training, but my health is just deteriorating? Is something wrong? She suggested, if it's too difficult, should we call the doctor? He declined. No, it's fine. his hand clenched tightly on his chest, silently fearing that if they called the doctor, his mana pulse would be revealed immediately. Even though Jan didn't know that Kalyan was a mage, but if I act carelessly, my life will be in danger. He pretended to appear healthy and said, "It's just that my health has weakened a bit. There's no need to call the doctor." Marilyn hesitated, "But, Your Highness," he forced a smile while his body trembled from exhaustion. "I said I'm fine. Just wait a moment, I'll be okay soon." Suddenly a loud shout echoed, "Don't turn away, stay right there." The loud voice of someone kept echoing, "Focus, direct your sword strike properly, stay alert." The loud sound caught the attention of the two. The knights were training together. It seemed like the knights had already started their training. Pa Ben continuously shouted, "Don't dodge the sword like that. If this were a battlefield, you'd be dead by now." The training scene was incredibly serious, and the atmosphere was intense. "Don't hesitate. Keep going." He happily remembered it was amazing back then. Marilyn reminded him from behind, "Your Highness, this is the training ground of the Pen Knights." He looked at her and replied, "Yeah, I know. I'm here just because I find it interesting." She was very surprised. "You who had no interest in swordsmanship before," he justified himself. "Now I find sword training interesting, that's all." She spoke up to remind him, "Your Highness, do you know what kind of place the Pen Knights are?" He confidently replied, "Of course I do. They are the royal knights," she corrected him. "Actually, they are the knights of the Bren family who hold the power of the king within their control." Pa Ben stepped forward, cutting across enough. He told them to leave. "If there's nothing else, then go. He found an excuse. The knights are getting distracted by your presence, and they can't train seriously because of it." Marilyn heard this and immediately shouted, "Show some respect. This is Prince Kalyan." He showed a fearful expression. "Is that so? You're Prince Kalyan," he said, then laughed mockingly. He teased, "I thought you were just some random person. You're just some cowardly rat sneaking a peek, aren't you?" Kalyan could no longer hold back. He was so angry that he burst out laughing. "Gods of heaven and earth, what a joke." Marilyn quickly spoke up in defense. "How dare you speak such blasphemous words in front of His Highness?" Pa Ben, unfazed, replied, "I already said I misunderstood him. Why do you have to be so sensitive? The prince doesn't even care about it." As soon as he finished his sentence, he looked at Kalyan and was immediately taken aback, horrified. A strong, intimidating aura radiated from him, causing everyone to hesitate. What's going on? Right in front of him, it's certain. Pa Ben remembered the past when he was riding on horseback, shouting directly into Kalyan's face. "What are you doing, Prince Kalyan? I have to return to receive the Queen's summons. Who dares block my path?" At that moment, Kalyan could only shrink back, trembling, and replied, "Forgive me, I'll move out of the way right now." Pa Ben couldn't remember when it happened, but Kalyan had changed. He was once a weak, indecisive prince, but now he seemed like a completely different person. Although his appearance was still the same, the look in his eyes gave the impression to others as if they were staring at a terrifyingly powerful monster. Right after that, Sion spoke up, interrupting his thoughts. "General Pa Ben, I'd like to ask you something," he said, staring intently at him. "What is your mission?" Pa Ben was completely intimidated by Kalyan's overwhelming presence and was too scared to say a word. At that moment, other soldiers appeared from behind. "General, is something wrong?" They saw Kalyan there and whispered among themselves, "Isn't that the third prince? What is he doing here? How troublesome. He's just a prince after all. A prince who's looked down upon by the knights." Pa Ben regained his composure, smiled, and said, "As you can see, we're in the middle of training, so I can't answer you right now. I hope the prince will just continue with his own matters." Marilyn looked at him anxiously. "Your Highness." Kalyan saw that he still held that arrogant attitude, so he frowned and spoke sharply. "General Pa Ben, I'm asking you report your mission immediately." Everyone there was surprised by his attitude, because in their minds, Kalyan had always been nothing more than a weak and useless prince. Pa Ben replied slowly, "My mission is to build a strong royal army and protect the royal family as well as this kingdom." Kalyan snapped a small branch from the nearest tree and said, "Exactly, build and protect, just like you said." With a single motion, he snapped the branch in half. Neither of those duties are being fully carried out. He furrowed his brow, clearly angry. "What are you saying? First, to build a strong royal army, from what I've observed. As for the army training you're conducting, it's completely a mess." He fixed him with a cold, sharp gaze. Immediately, to the astonishment of everyone, Callion moved so quickly that gusts of wind surrounded him. Without anyone noticing, he had already positioned himself behind Pa Ben. Callion wasted no time and, using the branch in his hand, lunged forward to attack him. Pa Ben turned pale with fear. If he couldn't block that attack, he would lose his life. In front of him, the image of himself being decapitated by Callion's own hand appeared vividly. Using all his strength, Pa Ben drew the sword from his side. He quickly blocked Callion's strike. He furrowed his brow with just that branch. Callion gripped the branch tightly with his hand. After that, he pushed with all his strength, forcing Pa Ben back. He suddenly smiled and without warning dropped the branch. Pa Ben's sword was immediately knocked away, flying far off and embedding itself into the ground. He smiled and glanced at him, Pa Ben clutching his wrist in disbelief. "You couldn't even predict the movements of someone who's never held a sword like me. You've disappointed me," Callion said. As Pa Ben fearfully looked at his trembling hand, he thought, "What the hell is this?" His behavior, and that damn aura. Callion held out his wrist, which had a red mark on it, and said, "You're supposed to protect the royal family and kingdom, yet you dare show disrespect to a member of the royal family like this. You even dare use a sword to harm a prince. Should I consider that an act of treason?" Callion asked, furrowing his brow as he looked at him. Pa Ben was so scared that his eyes widened in shock. "Is he really the third prince I once knew?" Immediately he knelt before Callion. "Please forgive me, Your Highness Callion. It was my ignorance. I never had any thoughts of treason. Please forgive me," he pleaded. The other soldiers, seeing his actions, were also stunned and stared with their mouths agape. Marilyn was no exception. She too was left speechless and stunned by what she had just witnessed. "Please, Your Highness, show mercy." On the outside he appeared respectful, but deep down he gritted his teeth in anger, thinking, "Because of this useless third prince, I've been humiliated like this. I will never forget the shame of today." The scene shifted. Jan furrowed his brows, his voice sharp as he asked, "Why do you want to come here to train your strength? Why bring a horse along amidst a garden full of vibrant flowers?" Callion calmly walked in with the large horse. Instead of feeling guilty, his face broke into a cheerful smile. Callion tossed the reins to Jan and said, "I picked it up on the way here. Its name is Jen." Jan, upset, shouted, "Wait, where did you go? Why did you bring this horse back?" A few minutes earlier, after the commotion died down, he pointed toward the black horse struggling wildly on the other side and asked the soldiers, "What's going on with that horse?" The soldier replied, "Prince, it seems we can't tame it. As you can see, it's very aggressive," the soldier added. Sion showed interest in the horse. "This horse, huh?" Yan, growing even angrier, said, "So you just brought back Prince Blanche's horse?" Callion didn't respond to him directly, but whispered to Marilyn, "He said anyone, whether a guide or a stableman, can ride it. Just keep what happened at the training grounds quiet." Yan anxiously asked, "But what if he finds out?" Callion sighed deeply and replied, "I've told you it's fine. If anything happens, then—" As he was speaking, suddenly, Callion felt a sharp pain in his chest. He let out a soft gasp, causing both of them to turn pale with fear. "Your Highness." He furrowed his brow silently, thinking, "Just as I thought. I've pushed this body too far." Jan, full of concern, asked, "Has the physical training been too much for you today?" Callion reassured him, "It's fine. It's been a long time since I've had the chance to actually spar with someone like this." Jan, surprised, asked, "Who was that, Your Highness?" Callion didn't answer the question, but said to Jan, "At this rate, I'll miss dinner. Hurry up and get ready." Jan quickly replied, "Yes, Your Highness. I'll prepare everything right away." Then he asked, "What should we do with this horse?" "Your Highness, it won't bite right." Callion smiled and replied that I'm not so sure about. In the beautiful garden, the sunlight shone on the flowers, making them even more vibrant. There, two people were sitting. "I understand now. So what did it say?" "Interesting indeed. I heard that the horse, even though it's a bit wild, is quite a challenge to tame." The man held a flower in his hand and crushed it mercilessly. "Even if a person like him struggles, it won't change his origins. Just crushing it to death isn't fun at all, so let's try it this way," he said. "Now let's see." Amidst his words, the petals slowly fell as if symbolizing the fate of someone. The scene shifted and Callion slightly curled his lips into a smile. Next to him were Branch and Randall. The three of them sat in silence, not saying a word. Callian thought to himself, "This atmosphere, I really can't get used to it. Is it like this every day?" But he stared intently at Branch. With a hint of suspicion, he thought, "Why is that bastard so quiet today? The Queen and Count Bren being late. It's probably my fault. He really can't control his expression, can he? He's still so childish." At that moment, a series of footsteps echoed. Callian immediately recognized the scent. He smiled, clearly amused. Finally, she's here, he thought with a smile. The one who truly holds the power of this kingdom, says Pren, the current queen of Kiris. After the previous queen passed away from a sudden illness, Celes ascended to take her place. She had borrowed power from her family, the Bren family, and gained control over the Royal Knight's army. Most of the nobility supported the Bren family, so over time Celes's power grew stronger. And the prince, who held no power at all, Callian, had become a laughingstock even to the common folk. Renom Bren, the second son of the Bren Marquis, a rather cunning-looking man, walked right behind her. He smiled and asked, "So shall we proceed with the agreement with Commander Paben?" She replied coldly, "Yes. Make sure the contract is thoroughly prepared for him." Yes, I understand," he replied. She slowly sat down in her chair, and then said, "And from now on, don't report trivial matters like this to me anymore. Really, do I have to pay attention to these petty matters?" Callian remained silent throughout, staring at her intently without saying a word. So the dining table was now nearly full with everyone present. Celes gently called his name Callian. "Seems like you've grown up a lot lately," she said, giving a smile that wasn't very friendly. Of course, he had already predicted this reaction. I knew this would happen, he thought. Celine smiled and took the wineglass, saying, "I'm not that significantly matured yet. I'm sure that in the future I will become even more mature." Blanche and Randall, sitting next to him, heard these words. Both looked surprised. Only Seals frowned, her face clearly showing displeasure. Right after that, Viscount Renan smiled brightly and said, "Of course, but regardless of how much you've grown, I almost didn't recognize you. Now you've finally shown your face, seeing you like this makes me really happy. You should have cut your hair much earlier." He casually said those words as if he couldn't feel the tense atmosphere. "And since you're still in your growth phase, surely you'll—" Before he could finish his sentence, Celes slammed her fan onto the table. Brother. Renan was clearly flustered, seeing that, I'm starving. Bring out the food already." Kion also found it quite amusing how the head of the Bren Merchant Guild could be this dim. Everything is exactly like the rumors, how interesting. Of course, his expressions couldn't escape Seals's eyes. She had been watching him from beginning to end. Then Seals whispered to her son Blanche. She asked her son, "You didn't tell me about it." He furrowed his brows and replied, "About what, mother?" She glared at him and said, "About the horse you brought, the one that doesn't listen." Blanche glanced at her, his expression slightly irritated, and replied, "It's just a horse, mother. It will be fine." Blanche glanced at her, a hint of annoyance in his eyes. He quickly turned his face away and let out a sneer. "If you had told me earlier, it would have been better," Celes said. Blanche nonchalantly replied, "You already knew." Seals immediately said, "You never told me. I know that it has escaped from your control." Seals immediately said, "You never told me. I know that it has escaped from your control." Hearing this, he suddenly froze, his entire face turning cold. Blanche threw the plate he was holding onto the table and said, "From the start, it was a useless horse." Saying that, he stood up, showing his intention to leave. "I'll go ahead." Blanche's series of actions made Seals furious. She gritted her teeth and muttered, "Blanche." 3 weeks later, during the annual birthday banquet of His Majesty, the people of the entire kingdom were filled with joy and excitement for the grand celebration. "Follow this way, they instructed. Since it is the king's birthday banquet, we must ensure there are no mistakes." At the square, people were walking back and forth in numbers too great to count. The atmosphere was filled with joy. "Look over there. That's the delegation of elves coming to congratulate. Those must all be gifts, right? The birthday party must be quite extravagant. The princes must be busy preparing too. Right, I'm so excited to meet them soon." At the same time, inside the palace, Kion was being carefully measured for new clothes. "Wait," he cried out and asked, "Your Highness, have you eaten?" But right after that, his face suddenly turned pale with an expression full of surprise. "Your Highness," blood from Callian's nose suddenly started flowing, continuously staining both his hands and his clothes. Each drop of blood dripped down onto the floor, one after another. Kalian's nosebleed kept flowing, causing the servants to pale in fear. Yan saw this and quickly ran to the prince. "Quick, bring the bandages here," he said as he held his nose and reassured them. "It's fine, it's nothing." Kalian smiled and reassured them. "It's just that I haven't been sleeping well lately. See, there's no more bleeding." But Yan remained extremely worried. That's not the real issue. Extin cried and said, "Please forgive my rudeness, but this isn't the only issue. Your Highness, you've lost so much weight. Just 3 weeks ago you still had some flesh on your bones." Kion fell silent upon hearing that and didn't say anything. Then he gave a faint smile and said, "So what if I've lost a lot of weight? Maybe it's just because I've been overtraining lately." He thought to himself that despite training so hard, his stamina was only getting worse day by day. The pain whenever he used mana was still there. "My heart is definitely having problems." The man furrowed his brows and said, "Your Highness, you mustn't take this lightly. Have you seen a doctor yet?" Kalion suddenly broke into a sweat, unsure how to deal with this. "It's not that bad. It's just a nosebleed." "Do I really have to see a doctor for this?" he thought, feeling extremely annoyed. "Why does this guy keep bringing up the royal physician? And of all times, why did I have to get a nosebleed in front of so many people?" Yetin still wouldn't let it go, continuing, "It's not just a nosebleed." Xion could only give a wry smile and say, "I'm really fine. Why can't everyone just let this go?" Just then, Yan jumped in and said reproachfully, "I knew it. It's because you were picking your nose again yesterday. You also find it hard to admit that personal preference to others." He continued speaking at length. "As I said, Prince Kalian maintains a very balanced diet and exercise routine. The nosebleed is just due to his personal hobby. There's no need to worry about it." Finally, Kion stopped pressing the issue, and since Yan had said so, it was settled. Since he understood the prince best, and thus Kalian's dignity in front of the servants was completely lost. In contrast to Kalian's expression of, "I don't want to live anymore," Yan smiled with great delight, even winking at him. Kalian was completely shocked, his mouth agape. This brat. The worried look on Yan's face suddenly appeared in Kalian's mind. "Are you all right? You don't look well." He sat wearily on the chair, feeling his body growing weaker, as if he were about to faint. After a moment of understanding, he realized that the cause lay in his mana. Although he had just been pranked, Kalian had no intention of blaming him. Was he really going to ruin his own image like this? Well, at least thanks to him, he wasn't being questioned anymore. This could be called a blessing in disguise. Then Zen gently said, "In that case, I'll adjust the attire as mentioned." He was a bit worried, but time was a bit tight. Yan smiled and said to him, "It's fine. The prince also has things to do, so he still has plenty of time until the event takes place." Seton heard this and happily grabbed the items to leave. "Well, that's great. If that's the case, I'll adjust the outfit for the afternoon event first," he said. After he left, Yan whispered softly into his ear. "Isn't it today, Your Highness?" Sion's face became serious as he gave a slight nod. He secretly thought, like this, my health condition will spread throughout the palace, so before that. Tonight, by all means, I must meet Ellen Manon. Scene transition. In the blink of an eye, it's the Emperor His Majesty's birthday. After everything was properly prepared, a royal palace butler came to inform Kalian that due to urgent matters to resolve, Prince Lan Cheon could not come. Therefore, we will make up for it by meeting each person individually. He heard that and raised his eyebrows in surprise. There's not even time to meet together, yet he wants to meet each person individually. Wouldn't it be more convenient to meet everyone at once? With that doubt in mind, Kalian slowly walked behind the butler. Soon they arrived at the Emperor's private room. Kalian felt a bit nervous, mixed with worry he didn't expect to be met alone, which made him a little uneasy. "Please come in, Your Highness." His Majesty was already waiting. He stepped into the room. The King of Kiris. Roman Lun Kiris was sitting on the chair, intently reading the stack of papers in his hands. Karan respectfully greeted him and asked to be granted an audience with His Majesty. But there was no response for a long time. He was very surprised. Is he ignoring me? Although I don't know anything about the etiquette of kiss, this behavior is definitely very rude. He frowned and thought to himself. After a moment, the man finally said to him, "Sit down." Kalian forced a smile without any hint of dishonesty and said, "Happy 38th birthday, Roman." The man coldly asked, How is it?" You look quite lively these days. Kalyan suddenly froze, his face darkening visibly, but he still kept the smile on his face. He recalled the expressions of the servants earlier when they saw him in trouble. They seemed to sneer at him. Even passers-by know. How can I quickly regain my freedom? Now I know the reason he wanted to meet each person individually, even though no one has time for it. If he met all three princes at once, he would have to focus on the conversation. Therefore, meeting each person individually is more effective. Because spending time just listening to his son wish him a happy birthday would be a waste. The more I learn about this family, the more I realize it's a complete mess. A father who doesn't care about his children. The crown prince is just a careless, indifferent person. The second prince is an impolite person. Everyone quickly gathered in the palace hall to celebrate the emperor's birthday. The attendant followed Branch and quietly reminded His Highness, "We can all smell the alcohol, Your Highness." But he didn't seem to care at all. Then Sela slowly walked in. The emperor, seeing her, said, "You're a bit late." Seal smiled and replied, "Yes, it couldn't be helped." Kalyan felt extremely excited, and the queen, "Do you have enough power to look down on the king? Among them, there is someone trying to destroy me." The announcement echoed and the event would begin soon. "Let's see who it is. Who is the one who sent an assassin to kill me?" In the midst of the lively crowd, people whispered when they saw Kalyan. "Have you heard just recently in the royal square, Prince Kalyan?" "I heard that too. He appeared in front of the people looking completely different, didn't he? Oh, and the second Prince BL looks like he's drunk. Oh no, not again. I guess it won't change anything. These people are too busy making a big deal out of it. But something feels off. Isn't it the same for everyone? It's not like in my past life. Something has changed." Everyone simultaneously shouted, "The third Prince Kalyan Ran Kiris is here." As soon as he stepped in, all the nobles in the hall stood frozen in surprise, completely stunned. The rumors were true. The prince with black hair and red eyes, just like Esfanan. He cut the fringe that was hanging over his face. And he also wore a red hairpin. Perhaps this is a declaration that he will no longer run away. Yan slightly furrowed his brows, his face showing a serious expression, and whispered into Kalyan's ear, "Your Highness, why is everyone—" He looked around and saw that everyone was deliberately avoiding his gaze. Yan curiously asked, "Is everyone looking at your attire?" "Just as I thought. It's because you're wearing such a beautiful outfit, of course anyone who sees it will be thrilled," he said excitedly. Hearing this, Kalyan frowned. They're looking and wondering why the third prince is wearing such jewelry. "See, do you know how hard I had to work to stop him from wearing that?" He recalled the scene when he was picking out clothes for the festival and shuddered slightly. Fortunately, it's only at this level. If he wore all that jewelry, it would look even worse, Kalyan muttered. Yan showed a fascinated expression, but then he quickly came to a conclusion. Those two have no sense of style, that's why they freely chose that hairpin. Scene transition. The two of them walked up the stairs one after the other. Kalyan walked while asking, "By the way, Yan, you mentioned that your family is also in Kis, right?" Yan felt quite surprised. "You still remember that?" "My sister and my father have gone back to our hometown, while the others are living in Karis," Yan replied. He then asked him, "I see. Have they visited the royal palace?" "If they receive an invitation, then yes." "By the way, when should I move the string to the upper garden?" Kalyan asked. Yan quickly realized that Kalyan didn't want to discuss this topic, so he changed the subject. Yan just shrugged and said, "Some things are better left unsaid." Kalyan looked down at the crowd below and said, "For now, just wait until the right moment comes." "You see, I want to meet someone," Kalyan said. Yan was so shocked that his eyes widened and his mouth hung open. "You want to meet who?" Kalyan smiled and asked him, "Do you know why the social hall is called the Sifis Hall?" Yan didn't understand why he was asking about this, but replied, "Of course I know. It's because it was named after the family of the first clan leader, who was also one of the 8 heroes in the Dual Road War. Duke Kitos H. Sif Kalyan explained. The only Duke family in Kis, the Svit family, despite having immense power, has remained loyal to the royal family for the past 500 years, wholeheartedly protecting the territory of Esfanan. Kalyan was very intrigued when he heard about this. "When I was young, I was really impressed by this story." Yan quietly whispered to him, "Your Highness is the person you need to meet." "Yes, that's right. The person I want to meet is—" At that moment, a loud laugh echoed throughout the hall. The summer night at Sifis was truly an immortal tune. Anyone who heard this voice frowned slightly. What a coincidence he's here too. The one who laughed loudly was none other than Duke Slyman H. Svit, the person just mentioned in the story. He smiled and said, I am Duke Slyman H. Svit. Am I right? Callian felt intrigued by him. A family with such long-standing loyalty was exactly the type of person he admired. Then should I test your sharpness, Callian said, immediately after he used a bit of mana to move towards him. As soon as he released the mana, Slyman immediately sensed it. He turned his head to look at him. Callian was pleased, thinking as expected he found me immediately after I just released a little. Jan saw Slyman looking at him and whispered, seems like Duke Sifis is interested in you. After all, he is one of the 5 sword saints of the 6 palaces. He wouldn't be that petty, he thought to himself. Then Callian replied to Jan's words, I'm truly grateful, but it's still too early. Just pretend like we're not paying attention. Then he glanced at Slyman and turned to leave. At this moment, the grand banquet had only reached its halfway point. Emperor Ram was raising his glass with the nobles saying, Thank you all for coming to celebrate, let's enjoy tonight for Karis. No one noticed that Karan and his attendant had secretly used a rope to climb down. To escape from there. He was happy as he climbed onto the back of the horse. Raven was indeed very obedient and gentle. Jan, feeling indignant, accused, Don't be fooled. When you're not here, Callian still firmly defended Raven, saying, Looking at how quick-witted Raven is, it's clear that it's really smart. He could only sigh helplessly. The palace guards, upon seeing Callian, did not stop him, but simply greeted him and stepped aside. I just need to go to the front door, right? Yes, while waiting there. That's right. At this moment, voices could be heard near the entrance saying, No invitation, no entry. I came from afar to attend the celebration after all. You're not allowed to enter, go away quickly. Sion, seeing the person standing in front of the gate, couldn't help but feel excited. He's here. At the palace gate, the man furrowed his brow and said, Are you sure you want to deny me entry just because of an invitation card? I am Ellen Manin. Everyone was surprised. Ellen Manin. Ellen Manin. Everyone was surprised. Ellen Manin. The 2 guards nearby tensed up. Then they signaled to each other. One of the top soldiers stepped forward and reminded, Even if you are Ellen Manin, you must have an invitation to enter. Ellen smiled mysteriously. He replied, Damn, so Kiris is distinguishing guests by their appearance. Baron, hearing those words, was surprised. What's going on? He considered that judging people based on their attire to discriminate is indeed a problem, but Ellen Manin must be deliberately making things difficult. Baron speculated that it seemed like he was making an excuse to avoid going to kiss. Ellen turned his horse and said, All right then, I'll head back. He felt a bit worried. What if we let him go like this? Jan immediately shouted, No. The king has ordered that no one is allowed to leave while the festival is ongoing. Ellen continued to move toward the outside. Baron, seeing the urgent situation, quietly worried. At this rate, I'll lose track of him. He suddenly spurred his horse and rode off, not forgetting to instruct his attendant, do whatever it takes to stop the soldiers. He rode on horseback giving orders. Go, Raven. Jan, still unable to process the situation, exclaimed, Your Highness. The guards were extremely flustered at this moment, trying their best to stop him. Your Highness, please get down from the horse, a knight shouted loudly, reminding, The king has ordered that no one is allowed to go outside. Baron disregarded all attempts to stop him and rushed swiftly toward the outside of the palace, leaving the knight startled. Everyone shouted, The prince has left the palace. Everyone shouted, The prince has left the city. Everyone shouted, Hurry, prepare the horses and chase after him. Jan felt awkward, thinking, What should we do now? He remembered Callian's instructions. Jan, do whatever it takes to stop the soldiers. Jan bit his lip, regaining his composure. I am the attendant of Prince Callian. No matter what, I must protect His Highness. This is my duty. Jan shouted loudly, drawing the attention of the knights and guards. Stop right now. He signaled them to stop and said it was Duke Sif who allowed Prince Callian to go outside. Everyone was surprised. Who are you to speak the Duke's name so casually? He used his hand to remove the hair tie and with a clear voice declared, I am Siran. Under the moonlight, a gentle breeze made his hair flutter. He was the eldest son of Duke Sif. The castle echoed with a hearty laugh. Siran slapped his thigh, laughing loudly, without stopping. Jan, sitting next to him, was so embarrassed that his cheeks turned bright red. He was frustrated, thinking there's nothing to laugh about. Then he said, Father. He laughed to the point of tears and replied, Sorry. I can't believe my son came up with such a clever move. He kept patting Jan's head, praising him. My son who left home just to raise and teach a little brat. His father continued to praise him endlessly for his cleverness, but said that was the right decision, though. Jan retorted, "No, your highness is about to ruin the relationship between father and his majesty." His father confidently replied, "He won't ask, don't worry." Jan was surprised and said yes. His father reassured him he won't suspect anything. It seemed that Sleeman understood Roman's character well. Roman was very suspicious. If by chance the prince received help from the spy clan, he would be placed in a situation where he would need to be cautious of our good intentions. If he accepts help through this relationship, it would be seen as assistance, not a punishment. This would be similar to acknowledging a peaceful relationship between our families, and the prince and Bren would likely notice that something is off. He suggested a solution, so let's bury this matter as if nothing ever happened. He seemed unwilling to get involved in anything regardless of the reason for His Highness leaving the city. Outside the palace, Callian was still following Ellen. Ellen spoke up. "It seems you didn't come all the way here just to criticize me for showing up uninvited, did you?" He removed his hood and turned around, asking Callian, "Why is the third prince of Kiris following this old man?" Baron quietly rejoiced upon hearing this, thinking, if it reaches the 7th lightning ring, there's a chance for reverse aging. Perhaps I'm about to witness that ability with my own eyes. Baron casually asked, "It's late, are you still planning to head back?" Ellen explained, "Every time I try to open a closed door, another one is often placed too high." Baron, though smiling, seemed angry as he muttered, "What does he mean by the door being too high? Is he trying to argue with me?" "Well, then he's asking for it," Baron responded. "I say this because you keep focusing on a door that's already closed while there's another door waiting for you. Where did you hide the invitation card?" Baron tried to think of a way to handle the situation, thinking I've been too focused on blocking the wind and forgot to wipe the dust off the doorframe. I didn't think the guards would make such a mistake just to prevent outsiders. Len was extremely surprised upon hearing this. He didn't apologize, but instead assessed me. Was it because of his straightforwardness, or was he just being rude? He gave a mischievous smile. He seemed like quite an interesting prince. He observed Callian and assessed that upon meeting him for the first time, the look in his eyes was not that of a 14-year-old. He suddenly realized something. After finishing his words, he suddenly called out, "Lower the phone." In Callian's confusion, he grabbed Callian's hand and said, "May I have a moment, Your Highness?" Callian flinched and asked, "What are you doing?" Around Callian's hand there seemed to be a red energy surrounding it. Suddenly he felt his heart ache tightening painfully. Baron noticed that Ellen's mana was flowing into Callian's body. It seemed that he had reached his limit as the flow of energy became stronger and stronger. Callian quickly shook Ellen's hand off the force of the energy pushing him back. Baron deduced he must have already realized the condition of his own body. "You feel confused, but there will be another door opening." His gaze became sharp. "That's right, you are absolutely correct. From some point onward, we could no longer use mana." Ellen silently analyzed. The problem wasn't about mana. He truly didn't understand that. Ellen looked at the hand, tightly gripping the reins, wondering if the root cause of the problem lay elsewhere. At this moment, Ellen's face was full of murderous intent. Clenching his fist tightly. A few things to know: Karan Kiris treated the mages very poorly despite them being descendants of dragons. The Grand Mage himself came to a family like this with the intention of teaching the people in that land that even great mages who don't know how to keep their composure will lose it. However, if my encounter, with the young prince standing in my way, could this encounter be fate? Ellen crossed his arms, wondering why he wanted to find me. Baron recounted the story as... He suddenly stopped. "If I lie, he will know right away. You call Ellen Mannon." He got off the horse and said, "Please respect me, I want to carry that name." He explained, "I believe that..." He seemed very determined, and soon my life would be in danger. Ellen knew quite a bit about Callian. It wasn't that he was unaware of the third prince's circumstances. Everyone hated the prince. Everyone was an enemy of the prince. As Ellen stepped down from his horse, he created a protective dome surrounding Karan and himself. He was slightly surprised silent magic. He cast magic without even chanting. I'm guessing he must be a 7th circle mage. Ellen wondered, "Is your target?" Ellen leaned against the horse and said, Is it simply just to prevent that from happening? His expression was serious. Was he someone trying to completely eliminate the root of the problem? Baron smiled and replied, "For now, I'm just trying to stop it from happening." Ellen was quietly surprised. "For now," Baron continued explaining, "but I also want to thoroughly resolve the root of the problem." He expressed, "To achieve what I want, even if I have to sit on the throne, I'm willing to do so. That's all." Ellen didn't expect that the throne for him was merely a means to an end. How could it be when he was just a prince with a body slowly dying away? He could see the determination in Callion's words, a prince with a personality similar to Sif's, a prince who needed him to achieve his goals. He subtly smirked, finding it quite interesting. The shield Ellen had set up was removed. He suggested, "Then send me that invitation again, let me see what you can do." Baron smiled in satisfaction. He immediately knelt down, showing his plea. Karen Lancuris humbly asked, "May I have an audience with my master?" Ellen was filled with pride. "I, Ellen Manon, will accept the prince's invitation. Save you." On the side, Yan Yan Yihua, "Are you sure the people in the palace don't know who I am?" Slan remained calm and reassured. "I told you I've handled everything. You don't need to worry. If it weren't true, you wouldn't be able to stay by the prince's side." He explained happily, "That's right, you're from the royal family. How could you not resemble your noble lineage at all?" He fell into deep thought. His hands clearly showed that he was a bit worried as he looked around. He wondered what's going on. He replied, "It's doing very well, the position of the head of the branch family that you left behind." He stood up and stretched. "Anyway, if you get tired of being a servant, you can always return to your old position whenever you want." He sighed. "It will probably be a while before we meet again, my child." He lowered his head, puzzled. "What do you mean by that, father? We'll meet again in 3 months, right?" His expression grew serious. "Do you really think about leaving?" He seemed uncertain. "Are you really willing to give up the position of the prince's servant?" He was unsure. "Are you really planning to quit being the servant of that brat?" He remained silent for a moment before replying. "He will soon be 15 years old." Slan was about to say something. Suddenly he called out, "Hey, son." He asked, "Do you know the nickname of our Sifis family?" You hesitated and replied, He smiled lightly, exactly just like you said. He clarified, the elephants of Curious. He imagined that the family was like gentle elephants in front of a pride of cunning lions. It's been a long time since we've fought for the throne. But when the lions begin to attack, those gentle elephants also become powerful. And we are strong. And they are called the kings of beasts, those whom even the zoo cannot touch. You looked at your father with a confused expression. Why is he suddenly saying this? He shouted, SL Man, teasing. Why, I'm talking about my name, the one you betrayed, and it's very powerful. That's why. He hugged his son tightly, saying, just do whatever you want. You could feel the warmth of happiness. Before it could even be romantic, for 3 seconds, he hugged his son tightly and said with a smile, Anyway, this brat makes me worry about you so much. Yan struggled. Stop it, father, it hurts. Around them, the air was filled with the sound of his son's screams, as if he were about to die. You straightened your clothes with a serious expression. Anyway, the Sifis family. Slan was surprised. What suddenly? Yan bowed his head to his father. Well then, see you next time, father. He watched his son's figure slowly fade into the distance. He appeared frustrated. Ugh, that meaningless stubbornness of his. He Sifis, I'm sure of it. He looked back, muttering, Anyway, that brat. Since when has he grown so much? He sighed, wondering to himself, what is that boy planning to do? In front of the magnificent and grand castle walls? People whispered and murmured, Oh my God, I'm not seeing this wrong. Am I? Everyone was focusing their attention on a black carriage. Was that really the symbol? A special symbol that surprised everyone, 7 blooming roses and a silver wand. A woman remarked, I heard about his pact with Peon. The person beside her questioned, but why would he come to kiss? The two of them took turns discussing eagerly. Isn't it obvious, after all, he went through something like that? If it weren't for his relationship with King Reben, he would have been abandoned by now. The whispers continued non-stop. It must be because of that rumor, right? That's right, the son of Ellen Manon is. Suddenly the person in the carriage stepped down. They paused their conversation. Stepping down was Ellen. He smiled to himself quietly, praising his new disciple for doing some very charming things. Back to yesterday, Sen happily guided Got It Master. Exactly at 9:30. He instructed, You need to be there and open the door at that time. Ellen deduced, is this a plan to compete with the Bren family of the prince? It won't be easy. He's waiting for the right time to introduce himself to the nobles and turn the game around. A voice interrupted his train of thought. I'm quite surprised by your unexpected visit, Master Manin. It turned out to be the butler and the prince's servant who were waiting. A surprised voice echoed. What did you just say? Ram asked a place to stay. Are you Masin from Kiris? Yes, we need a place to stay in Kiris. He fell into silence. He calculated carefully to confront Select. I think I need power like Eleni. But thinking that he would suggest something like this first, he wondered what he was planning. As if understanding Roman's curiosity, Ellen explained honestly last night at the square. He made up an excuse. I saw a black cat with red eyes. Ram, hearing this, sprayed some glue, a black cat. Then he forced a smile and continued making up. He's quite smart, so I think I should teach him some new things, but I don't have a place to stay. Hearing this, the red-eyed black cat isn't much different from any other cat. Ram asked cautiously, What are you planning to teach the prince? He smiled and replied, Of course, magic. He sipped his tea calmly and said, Not only that, but I also plan to create an environment that the cat will like. If I want to do that, I need help from the house owner and clean the house a bit. Roman was very surprised when he heard the request. He was concerned, will you be able to manage it? He didn't hesitate to affirm, I have decided to take Prince Kalian as my disciple. Therefore Bren cannot stop me, and I won't just teach him, but also give him to the prince. So if the master avoids this and decides to help your prince, they won't be able to stop me. All these thoughts are truly the prince's invitation. He clenched his fist, hesitated, then stood up and declared, All right, I will provide you with accommodation. He added, This house is already very messy, so I can't let it get any messier. He walked toward his desk, but for some reason I was quite curious. I heard that child wasn't anything special. He found it hard to understand. Not special. He silently thought, even though the condition of his health was indeed hopeless. He remembered the moment when he held Kalian's wrist to the point that finding something normal was difficult. He had heard that the child had many fears, so thinking about that child, someone who seemed to even fear horses chasing after him, but why from before? He was only talking about what he had heard. Ram interrupted his train of thought, saying, If he were extraordinary, I would have heard about it already. He hesitated. Your prince, perhaps you know his height. At this, the two of them fell silent and stared at each other. Ellen casually explained, By any chance do you know the prince's height? Seeing his silence, he was sure in his mind that just as he thought, he didn't know anything at all. He stood up. Depending on the moment, attention could be a poison, while indifference could be a remedy. However, he solemnly expressed, Being busy is not a good excuse, Your Majesty. The room fell into silence. He clearly showed his displeasure. As for Masin, I will overlook his attitude of not knowing his place, assuming it's due to his concern as Kalian's master. He was truly angry how ridiculous it was that I had to explain this, but I genuinely cared about the prince. He walked to the door and grasped the doorknob. Especially that child Kion. He is truly my most beloved child. Roman dismissed him. I think we should end this conversation. Ellen muttered, waving his hand. A red circle appeared around Roman, just like when Ellen met Kalian. He stood outside the circle and said, That's enough small talk, Your Majesty. Please take a look again. He questioned, What the hell are you doing? How can you use magic in the royal hall? Ellen recounted what he had observed. His lips were dry, his breath shallow, and his skin pale and wan. And beneath his nails it was gradually turning purple. His clothes had been sewn in a hurry. It would take about a month to make a set of clothes, but they had been altered to fit a body that had lost a lot of muscle mass. He recounted how Kalian's health had deteriorated. The prince tried to get up, but couldn't pull his body off the bed, his eyes tightly shut as he felt dizzy. Roman panicked. No way. Ellen assessed, If you continue to act like an outsider like this, you will lose everything. On the side, Baron Yan stood in front of Kalian's room, and a servant approached Yan. She worried, Is it almost time, yet the prince still hasn't had his morning tea? In her hand was a golden teacup. She smiled and said, Please give it to me. I will take care of the prince if he has it. She took the tray in her hands and walked into the room. Kalian was lying on the bed. Yan was worried he's still sleeping. Was yesterday too much for him?